Hi jugglers! This tutorial is going to be on vanilla siteswap. That's siteswap without any synchronized or multiplex throws or catches. Before we get started though, I want to outline what exactly I'm going to be covering in this. First, I'll be talking about what siteswap is. Then, I'll be moving on to what the numbers mean. Following that, we'll cover how to interpret strings of different numbers, like 534 or 744. If your only goal is to be able to read and then do siteswaps, you can feel free to stop there. However, if you want to learn more about the theory of siteswaps and some of the math behind it, keep going. We'll be talking about validity, what it means to be a valid siteswap, and how do you check to see if it's valid. Finally, we'll end with a fun interactive quiz. Siteswap tells you the number of beats later a ball that's just been thrown will be thrown again. It assumes that you alternate hands that you throw from and assumes that you never have more than one ball in a hand. If you keep your dwell time constant, you can think of siteswaps as the height in which you throw the ball. That can be a little hard to digest, so we'll go through a bunch of examples now. This is a 3. It's the way you juggle all 3 balls if you wanted them to be the same height. The important bit here is that it's a low crossing throw. Obviously, I'm not just juggling one 3 throw, I'm juggling lots of them in a row. But in siteswap, if the same number or set of numbers keeps repeating, we just say it once. Also, it doesn't matter what the shape of the ball's path is. If it's a low throw that switches hands, it's a 3. Mills Mess, Boston Mess, and Reverse Cascade can all be examples of the siteswap 3. A 4 is a slightly higher, non-crossing throw. It's exactly the way you juggle 4 balls. Remember, the shape doesn't matter. Here I'm juggling 4-ball mills, and every throw is a 4. The balls never switch hands. This is a 5 throw, a medium height, crossing throw. It's very much like a 3. Remember, the shape of the throw doesn't matter. A 6 is just like a 4 except higher. Remember, it doesn't change hands and the shape of the throw doesn't matter. A 7 is just like a 5 except higher. It switches hands, and if you thought you were getting a 7-ball mills here, you are sorely mistaken. If a 7's a high crossing throw, a 5's a medium crossing throw, and a 3's a low crossing throw, what's a 1? A very, very low crossing throw. Similarly, a 6 is a high non-crossing throw, a 4 is a medium non-crossing throw, so a 2 is a low non-crossing throw. The weird thing about 2's is that nothing happens in the hand that throws it between the throw and the catch. Therefore, you don't need to throw it at all. This is called a lazy 2, compared against when you do throw it, which is an active 2. Let's review. A 1 is a very quick crossing throw. A 2 is a low non-crossing throw, or a hold. A 3 is a low crossing throw. A 4 is a medium non-crossing throw. A 5 is a medium crossing throw. A 6 is a high non-crossing throw. And a 7 is a high crossing throw. But what about 0? Well, if a 3 is how you would juggle 3 balls, and a 4 is how you would juggle 4 balls, etc., then a 0 would be how you juggle no balls. A 0 is an empty hand for a beat. Finally, what about the really high throws, the ones that go past 9? Well, let's take 10 for example. If you wrote down 10, it would look the same as 1 0. So instead, we go into the alphabet. A 10 is an A, an 11's a B, 12 a C, etc. The take-home message here is that odd throws cross, and the higher the value, the higher the throw. Even throws don't cross, and the higher the value, the higher the throw. Here's a chart that shows the relative heights of the throws 1 through 7. I'll upload this somewhere and put a link in the description if you want to take a closer look at it. For our first example, let's do a 4-4-1. That's a non-crossing throw, followed by a non-crossing throw, followed by a quick crossing throw. So put together, it looks like this. One of the really nice things about Siteswap is that you can repeat a valid Siteswap as much as you want. So you have 4-4-1, but if you want to repeat it, it goes 4-4-1, 4-4-1, 4-4-1, 4-4-1. You can also do most valid Siteswaps from a warm start instead of a cold start. From a warm start, 4-4-1 looks like this. And repeat it.
Here's a 7-2-3 with the 2's as holds. If you ever see a pattern that goes right, right, left, left, like this one, there's probably either a 2 or a 0 in it. Here's a 7-4-4, a high crossing throw followed by 2 medium non-crossing throws.
If a vanilla Siteswap's valid, it guarantees that a ball will only land in a hand that's not occupied. A looser definition is that if a Siteswap's valid, it works. Thankfully, you can find out if a Siteswap is valid by only looking at the numbers. To check if a Siteswap's valid, there are 2 easy tests you can put it through. First, if you take the average of the Siteswap, you have to get a whole number. In fact, the whole number that you get will be the number of balls you're juggling. The second rule is a little bit trickier, but becomes easy after you've run through a few examples. Consider any value in the Siteswap, say n. If the number 1 after n is 1 fewer than n, you're going to get a collision, and the Siteswap is going to be invalid. It follows that if the number 2 after n is 2 fewer than n, you're going to get a collision. Same thing with 3 after n being 3 fewer than n, 4 after n being 4 fewer than n, etc. Trust me though, this is a lot easier than it sounds. Let's run through a few examples.
Let's look at 6-1 and see if that's a valid Siteswap. The first step is to take the average. The average here is 3.5, and since that's not a whole number, it's not a valid Siteswap. Let's look at the Siteswap 5-4-0. The average is 3, so it passes that test. Next, let's check for collisions. 5 minus 1 is 4, minus 1 is 3. We see that there's a match on the 4's, which means that the 5 and the 4 will collide. This means that it is not a valid Siteswap. Next, let's look at the Siteswap 9-2-4. Taking the average, we find that it's a 5-ball pattern, so it passes that test. Next, let's check for collisions. 9 minus 1 is 8, and 8 minus 1 is 7. Since we don't have any matches, we don't have any collisions, right? Well, not quite. Remember that 9-2-4 is actually repeated. 9-2-4, 9-2-4, 9-2-4. So we need to check for collisions all the way through the sequence. When we do that, 6, 5, 4, we get a match on the 4. That means that there will be a collision there and that it's not a valid Siteswap. Finally, let's do the Siteswap 8-2-2. The average is a whole number, 4, so it passes that test. Now, checking for collisions, we take 8 minus 1 is 7, minus 1 is 6, which doesn't match any of the values. So it's good, right? Well, not quite. Remember, like the last example, 8-2-2 is repeated. Let's write it out and keep checking. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. No matches means no collisions, and no collisions means 8-2-2 is indeed a valid Siteswap. Now for everyone's favorite part, the quiz. I'll be juggling a Siteswap and provide you with 3 options. Choose the option that corresponds to the Siteswap that I'm juggling.